Hello, beautiful MILFs, and welcome back to another episode of the MILFs Who Pivot podcast, where the term MILF is short for Money Making Independent Lady Friends. I'm your host, Bianca Terry, and each week I'll either be interviewing or reading about amazing women who have pivoted in life to pursue their wildest dreams and wealth from a MILF's perspective. This podcast aims to motivate and encourage other MILFs to boldly explore uncharted paths towards a fresh and fabulous leveled up life. Captain Kelly J. Gordon is an accomplished motor yacht captain whose start was far from the water as she grew up on a farm in small town Indiana. It was her drive to succeed, learn, and thirst for adventure that led her to a career in yachting. Her path into yachting was a unique one that started in Beaufort, North Carolina, where she now claims as home base and has since allowed her to navigate many different seas. Kelly most certainly takes pride in her ability as a motor captain, but also has a soft spot for the curious and inquisitive young adult looking to get their start in the industry. As a former chemistry professor, Kelly loves to teach and seeks to encourage and inspire those that dream of a career in the yachting industry. Let's get right into it. Captain Kelly, welcome to the show. Very happy to have you.
Thanks for having me. I'm so glad to be here.
Absolutely. I was very excited. I couldn't wait to talk to you because I also love the water. I'm not a yacht captain, but I love being out on the water. So definitely great to meet you.
There's nothing like it. The water is just such a, and I think there's even science on it. Like having water be a part of your life or being on it or in it or near it or around it, there's just something about it. And I could even be having the worst day. And literally, as soon as I get to work or I get on the water, it's just like everything just melts away completely.
Yeah, it's therapeutic. Yeah, there's
It
got to
is
be science behind it.
so
Definitely
much so.
therapeutic.
Yeah.
So let's jump right in. Before we get into the work that you're doing now as a captain, take us back to who you were in your 20s, 30s, even your childhood, and how that's helped shape who you are today. What were you doing back then?
Oh, wow. Okay. So let's go way back. Let's
Okay.
go. I'll try to give you the abbreviated long version if that makes any sense. So let's go way back to 6-year-old little me. And I'd always wanted to be a veterinarian and loved animals. And we always had dogs and cats. We eventually bought a horse farm, and then we bought a bigger horse farm. Um, and then I just knew as that grew and grew that what I wanted to be was a veterinarian. But as life and childhood sometimes throws you some curveballs, I didn't have a great father. He was really kind of a crappy father, but my mother was amazing, and so were my siblings. But school was tough. School was really hard, and I think that a lot of people can agree that grade school, high school is rough. Kids get made fun of, and I was one of those that got made fun of a lot. And so, come 6 weeks into my freshman year, at the age of 15, I dropped out of high school. And I had gone to my mom and told my mom, of course, it was kind of just gradually going downhill of me not being happy, not wanting to be in school and that kind of thing. I was a great student. I was a straight A student. But kids were just mean, man, just really mean. And I grew up to be big, to have like boobs and a butt when it wasn't cool. It's cool now, but it wasn't cool then. And so I got made fun of a lot. And so mom agreed that the best thing for me, best decision she ever made as a mom, I think, was to let me quit. But since I was 15 and I was dropping out of high school, that meant she had to sign me out. She had to sign a bunch of paperwork. And I'll never forget the day that we walked into the principal's office. And as she's signing the paperwork, he looks me dead in the face, but says to my mom, "She will never amount to anything." And that was a lot. And looking back on that, I'm like, how did my 15-year-old little self take that? And I took it in stride. I square shoulders and I took that. And the only thing I can attribute my stubbornness to was being like, okay, fine, I'll show you. Like, you
Mhm.
think I'm not going to amount to anything? Watch this, um so talk about learning to utilize some of there's a lot of lessons in that, but learning to utilize maybe some of your weaknesses, my stubbornness as a strength. learning how to use my anxieties as a strength. So I did, and I proved him wrong. And I started running the farm at the age of 15. And then I quickly said, okay, well, maybe that's not going to be the most lucrative career and maybe not the most sustaining. Maybe I should find something else to do. And when I was, for the brief time, the 6 weeks that I was a freshman in high school, I had taken an elective, and it was welding. And I was really good at it, had always been really good with my hands, very mechanically inclined. And I said, well, I was good at that. Let me go back to trade school and let me do that. So I did, learned how to weld. I was really good at it and won some competitions, decided to get a degree in it. So I started studying weld engineering. So I went to college with my GED at the age of 17 and was studying welding, and then quickly realized, while you're good at this, what you've always wanted to do is be a veterinarian. So I changed my major to chemistry, got my bachelor's in chemistry, applied to veterinary school, got in the first time I applied, which is unheard of. Like, it's extremely competitive, and I did. And a lot happened then. I had been dating a guy since I was 17 years old. So from 17 to 22, we broke up. I was supposed to move away from home. I was supposed to be away from my family. I was at a Big Ten university after having gone to a small, quaint, very home style kind of university. And I had taken out maximum loans to afford veterinary school and still couldn't afford it. So, all these things at the young age of 22, the boyfriend, the lack of funds, the being away from home, I quit. So, I quit my lifelong dream of being a veterinarian. So now, in my 22-year-old mind, I'm a complete failure. I have disappointed my family. I've disappointed this small town that, essentially had planned my whole entire future for me. They knew that I was going to marry the farmer. I was going to have kids. I was going to take over the local veterinary clinic. Like, it was all planned for me. And so now the boyfriend and I have broken up. I quit veterinary school. So now I'm a complete, in my mind, disgrace to my family and to the town. So, still trying to identify my value through having a boyfriend. And I'm sure that that goes to some of the issues that I had, not having a good father as a role model. There's some deep stuff there. I know there was. Trying to, and then also, I'm 43. So at that time, society really idolized women getting married and having babies. And so the next man that came along, I decide would do. And a high school friend was home on leave from the military, was living in North Carolina. And I was wanting to get the hell out of Dodge, so to speak, because I felt like this failure. I felt like this disgrace to my family. So he said, well, why don't you come out here? So I did. And I moved. And I essentially ran away. And I was running away from shame and guilt. Man, did I learn so much in that. And so moved to North Carolina. I said, well, what are you going to do now that you're here? So I said, well, let me get my master's degree in chemistry. You've already got your bachelor's, so get your master's. And upon graduation, well, wait a minute, let me rewind. In the middle of that, I married the guy and I divorced the guy. And then I married another guy and I divorced that guy. So I'm like, okay, so apparently a man is not going to fix the issues that are going on in the inside of my head. And in the midst of that second divorce, I wanted to kill myself. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up to do it. And I attribute to this day my chemistry degree and my background into understanding this. Something was going on in here, that the chemistry was not right. And thank God I didn't do it. And I crawled back into bed, waited till 8 o'clock in the morning, and got into the counseling, got into see a psychotherapist or a psychiatrist and a psychotherapist. I got on the appropriate medication that I needed to be on. I started into intensive counseling 3 days a week, and I really started doing the deep work. Like, it hit me. I'm like, okay, I need to do the work. And put the work in, fixed myself, if you will, graduated, got a degree at a local community college, and made a really cool friend. It's weird how life puts certain people on your path at certain times. And my first semester teaching, this was college, a woman, she would have been 40, 45 at the time, coming back for her second career, was, I did not know, a really huge part of this little town that I was living in that was, I also did not know, such an integral part of the yachting community and the transit going north and south along the eastern seaboard. And she just kept saying, "Let me show you around the town. Why don't you go out with me?" She just, there was something that she wanted to befriend in me. And I kept saying, "Look, I'm teaching. This is not going to work." Finally I said, "Okay, fine." She wouldn't let it go. I said, "Fine, when I turn grades in, I'll go out with you."
And Kelly,
And
before we move on
okay,
into that next phase, I just want to pause for a minute and go back to you leaving high school and what the principal said to you. I mean,
that's a huge statement, right? To tell somebody they're never
yeah,
going to amount to anything when they're 15 years
I
old.
know, and this is not the first time that I've heard that. I've heard
What?
similar stories, and I'm just bewildered at the gall of someone in education telling a student that they should be inspiring, educating, just telling them you won't amount to anything.
Isn't it
And
crazy?
it's crazy, and all of the things that you've gone through after that. It's like kudos to you for being able to come out of all of that. That's very serious. And like you said, you had to do some deep work. There was obviously a message there. You listen to your chemistry brain and thinking about, okay, something's not right going on in here. But at the same time, something stopped you, prevented you from leaving this earth.
You know,
You must have seen
I,
a light at the tunnel.
I'll tell you what stopped me. Not only it's, I don't know what you want to call it. Do you want to call it God? Do you want to call it spirit? Do you want to call it
Mm-hmm,
uh, the universe? What do you want to call it? I don't know. But just as I said, it's funny how the universe puts people on your path in life.
mm-hmm,
Well, it's funny how certain circumstances happen because so look, I'm a country girl. I was married to a guy from the military, so naturally we're going to have guns in the house, right?
mm-hmm,
And not only that, he was infantry, so you can really imagine that we're going to have guns in the house. And I grew up on a farm shooting guns, so it just was part of my culture. Um, he was about to deploy. We had been to the rifle range the week prior, and he wanted to go shooting with me because he left me a gun for self-protection, and he just kind of wanted to have a refresher course, if you will, with me at the rifle range. Looking back, it's odd that someone intervened because we shot all of the rounds. We used all of the bullets.
mm-hmm,
And normally we would stop and buy more. Again, you got to remember this is an infantryman, so guns are his life.
mm-hmm,
For whatever reason, the week before he deployed, we used all of the rounds and we didn't stop and replenish them. So what stopped me was when I pulled the pistol out of the nightstand drawer that night and chambered it, I realized we didn't have any rounds.
mm-hmm,
And I went so far as to look for them because I was going to do it. I was done. I couldn't do it anymore. Like I was going to accomplish the mission. And I went so far as to opening up the closet. And I said to myself at 2 o'clock in the morning, where the hell do you get rounds? And I'm like, well, Walmart. That's the only place you're going to get bullets is Walmart. So I literally get up and I put my pants on, and I remember I'm my right leg, one leg into my pants. And that's when something snapped and said, don't do this. And I attribute that to my chemistry, my lack of, or my degree, my knowing of the biochemistry and how that works in the brain. But I always look back at that and I'm like, it's really funny
mm-hmm.
how we didn't replenish the rounds. It's really funny how we went to the rifle range the week before he deployed and used all of the bullets. It's just, I don't know what. I guess the universe wasn't ready for me to do it that night.
Mm-hmm.
And because on any other day in an infantryman's life, their house is going to be full of guns and bullets, but there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a single one in the house. How does that happen? How does the universe, God, spiritual thing, whatever you want to call it, how does that work?
Yeah. Yeah. You were being protected. I believe you had angels surrounding you. I'm going to just jump out there and say it. It's God.
It,
I believe in God. I'm a spiritual person, not necessarily religious, but I do believe in a higher power. And I think that you were just being protected, you know, as one of God's children. And you, by you sharing that, I mean, first and foremost, I want to say thank you, because that can't be an easy thing to talk about. I don't know how often you've shared this, but it gave me chills. Just all the little details, not having the rounds, not stopping to replenish them. That's something like, how could that have gone over his head? You
I
know,
know.
it started back then. The protection started back then. So
I share it
incredible.
because there's a lot of messages in it, for one. But the main reason that I share it is because for whoever's listening,
Hmm.
I think sometimes there's some comfort in knowing that there are other people out there that have been in your shoes, that have been in your situation.
Yes.
And that was when I was 29 years old. And at 43, I can tell you I am the happiest I have ever been. So I share that to let you know that I was done. I was done living. But something happened, and something said, we're not going to let this happen tonight.
Hmm.
And in that moment is when it clicked with me, and I said, don't do this. Go to the doctor. And that's when I crawled back into bed, and I laid there staring at the ceiling until 8 a.m. And I called the psychiatrist and I called the psychotherapist. And I got into and this is interesting too, how the universe makes this work. The psychotherapist that I saw, or the psychiatrist rather, the medical doctor, was out of this world amazing. He was so good with me. He was so kind. He was so caring. He had he had a side of compassion, but he had a side of humor. He knew it was serious, but he knew how to make light of it. He knew how to interact with me, and we had to try four different drugs before we finally found the right one. And I remember the first one that he put me on, and it made me gain a lot of weight. And I came in and I said, well, life is good. I'm really happy. I said, but I've packed on like 20 pounds. And he's like, and I remember what he said. He was like, oh, we can't have that. We got to try something else. He's like, because now you're happy, but you're going to be depressed here pretty soon because you're 20 pounds heavier, So he was like, okay, so this one isn't going to work, And then I tried another one with him, and I said, life is good. I'm really happy. I said, I'm so happy that I didn't even care that I was late to work the other day. And he goes, okay, well, that's a little too happy. And so, like, he was just like all of these little pieces, like how on my first try did I get an amazing psychiatrist, medical doctor, and an amazing psychotherapist on my first go. How that doesn't happen. A lot of times you have to find the right doctor, you have to find the one that fits, you have to find the right counselor that fits. And on my first go, I've got this fun, caring, kind, compassionate psychotherapist that works, or psychiatrist that works with me to get me on the right drug, and the psychotherapist, the counselor, that was just so cool. And how is it that's just one more piece of the puzzle, that right out the gate that I got these two amazing people in my corner.
Yeah.
So I got on the right drug, and I spent 3 days a week intensively counseling with this woman. And oh my God, digging deep, learning a lot, learning the tools, that I need. And I fixed it, is what I said. So I fixed this. I fixed my mind. I'm like, okay, life is good. I'm fixed now. And then got divorced, got through that, got my teaching job. And this is where, again, it's funny how certain people are put in your path.
Mm-hmm.
And Joanne, she's the one that I'm saying that was back for a second degree, and just was relentless about showing me the town. Relentless. And I mean, just wouldn't give up. And I was like, okay, fine. Like after I turn grades in, okay, we will go out. Like leave me alone now. So then this is where, I was saying I had no clue that I was in living in a little town that was such an integral part of the yachting industry. I didn't even know what the yachting industry was. I really didn't even have any clue how close I was to the ocean because I was just going to work and going home, going to work and going home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think she saw that too, and she was such a huge part of the town. I mean, she was involved in everything that she wanted me to see what was there. But it's really weird because after I excuse me, years later asked her, "Why did you keep after me? Why is it you wouldn't give up?" And she's like, "There was just something. There was just something about you." And she's like, "I couldn't put my finger on it." And so when I finally did go out with her, she took me to a party on a yacht, and I'll never forget. We're walking down the dock, and I'm looking at this thing, and I'm like, "Oh my God, this thing's massive." And I come from North Central Indiana. Like, we a bucket of water is about the biggest body of water we've got around there. So I'm like, "Is that a yacht?" And she's like, "It is." And we get to the end of the dock, we get to the boat, and she's like, "Well, are you going to get on?" And so I climb the sea stairs, and I'm like literally 1 foot on the back deck. And I look around, and I'm like, this is what I want to do.
Wow.
This is what I want to do. Didn't know bow from stern, didn't know port from starboard, but I knew that's what I wanted to do. And here we are. Like, how does all of this work? How does this work that you've got a crap dad, but you've got an amazing mom. You're told at 15 that you'll never amount to anything. Then, you want to completely end your life, but something intervenes. Then a special human's put in your path. Like, how does all of this happen?
Mm-hmm. I said it before. I think it's God just orchestrated everything in your path for you.
It Yes, there's something. It's
Yeah.
it's 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 whatever you want to call it, because maybe some people are religious, maybe some people believe in God, maybe some are more spiritual, maybe some are more it's the universe. Whatever
Mhm.
he or she is, did something. But at the same time, I share all of this because while all of these things happened, I also put a lot of work in. I put a ton of work in. Like the days of being dedicated to my therapy, the days that I didn't want to go listen to what the therapist had to say, the days I didn't want to dig things up she wanted to dig up, the days that I didn't want to read the book or didn't want to do the exercise, the days that I just wanted to quit. And I did it. And 29, so 26 was when I didn't want to be here. I worked really hard for 3 years, and at 29 is when I thought I fixed myself. And then I said I was the happiest I'd ever been. But then midway through my 30s, I took another dip because I didn't realize that I fixed it, but you have to maintain it. So
Mhm.
it's like, I say it's like this. You go to the gym, you lose 20 pounds. Well, you can't stop going to the gym because you lost the 20 pounds, right? You
Mhm.
have to maintain it. So then I took another little dip. I had to go back into therapy, and I was like, okay, I get this. Now you learned how to fix it, but now you have to learn how to maintain it. What are the tools to help you through a stressful situation or when your anxiety is just like on overdrive? Like, and so then I learned the tools, and then I got to another pivotal year, and that was year 39. And that's when I said I am truly the happiest I've ever been, and I'm 43 and I'm still saying it. So to anybody out there that's listening, hang in there. Like, hang in there
Yeah.
because it gets better.
Mm-hmm. And hang in there while doing the work. And that means taking steps to whatever it is you think you should be taking steps toward, and whatever natural pivots happen, like in your case, the door will be open and you'll be able to walk right through into that next pivot.
And
So,
it's crazy because I'd always wanted my lifelong dream was to be a veterinarian.
yeah.
And I'm a super yacht captain. Like, how, like, and in between, I get my master's degree in chemistry. Like, how does all of that work? But it does.
Mm-hmm.
somehow, you know.
When I'm how okay, so if being a veterinarian was your lifelong dream, and you left school and you went through some other things, how did you get over that? How did you shift your brain to be like, okay, I'm not going to be a veterinarian?
That was
How did
hard.
that work?
That was so hard. And actually, the university after I quit didn't want to give up on me, and they actually deferred my admissions for 3 years, hoping that I would come back.
Hmm.
And and in the midst of that 3 year period of them deferring, I actually packed up my U-Haul trailer and moved back to Indiana, literally to pull in my mom's driveway and look at my little brother who had come out there to help me get home and say, I can't do this. And I turned around and went right back to North Carolina because I still I still was dealing with some crap. I was still dealing with being a failure. And for a long, long time, in my mind, I failed at my lifelong dream. I failed at marriage number one. I failed at marriage number two. Like, how much more can I freaking screw up, right? And it took a long time for me to accept that, yes, that was and is my lifelong dream, but that's not the path that is meant for me. So that's a really that's really really good question. I struggled with that for a long time because I felt like a failure, and I felt like, oh my God, this is your lifelong dream. And to this day, it still bothers me. But when I look at what I'm doing now and look at I mean, gosh, I didn't think when I was going to become a super yacht captain that I was going to become an influencer. I didn't think I was going to be speaking internationally. I didn't think I was going to be sharing my story like this. And I never would have thought that people would send me messages every day now saying, "You've changed my life. You've inspired me to live again." So even though that may have been, and it sometimes may still be my lifelong dream, I think that somebody had a bigger plan for
Hmm.
me, because while I'm not fixing animals, I'm helping people live their best life.
Yeah.
And I'm encouraging them. And even if it's just me sharing my story about how I didn't want to be here anymore, or even if it's just me sharing that that marriage number one didn't work, marriage number two didn't work, but you know what? I have an amazing partner now, and he doesn't care that I've been married twice, and so there's so many lessons in it. And so yeah, and especially when I see an animal that maybe is injured or needs help, or I love medicine, so I love the inquisitive part of that. Yeah, it's a hard one to swallow, but when I look at the lives I'm able to touch now, it's pretty freaking cool.
Hmm. Yeah. So it may have been your first love and, like you said, your lifelong dream, but not the ultimate plan for your life.
For whoever,
Yeah.
for whoever had
Yeah.
the plan for me. It
Amazing.
wasn't their plan. It wasn't life's plan.
Right.
My plan might have been to be a veterinarian, but life had something else for me.
Exactly. And you
And
were
I think,
open to receive it. That's also important.
well,
You
yeah, no, go with that. Go with that. You're on a good point there. Like, how important is it? I always say you got to be eyes wide open for opportunity. You have
Yeah.
to be open to receive it. You have to be, when I was younger, I used to be like, God, when I was like 20 years old, I swear, I had my life planned out to when I was in my 80s, and what nursing home I was going to be in, and what the visitations, like I was nuts, like with planning it all out. And I look back on that now, and now I'm like, I welcome the unknown, because what I know now is that the unknown now, yes, I have a general plan. I
Hmm.
think we all need to have some sort of basic plan. But now when I get thrown a curveball or the plan doesn't go as planned, I get excited about it, because I'm like, okay, well, that didn't work out, but what's behind it? What's coming next? Because I know whatever's coming next is either going to be great, or even if it's shit, it's going to have a great underlying lesson in it. Like, I get excited for the unknown now, whereas the unknown used to really just spool my anxiety right up. Now I get excited for it. So you're so right about that. You have to be open to receiving it.
Hmm. That's a good lesson. You have to train your brain to get excited about the unknown, because most of us don't. I mean, we understand pivots in life, we understand changes, but still, when those things come along and we're like, oh my God, why? Why is this happening? Why now? But
Yeah.
to retrain your thought process to welcome those changes, because like you said, there could be, there's underlying messages, underlying lessons, and become excited about the unknown. I like that.
Well, thank
Something
you.
I'll take away for myself.
Oh, well, thank you. And another one is the anxiety piece of it, because my anxiety since I was little bitty has just been like through the roof.
Mm.
And this is actually the first fellow that I worked for. Huge anxiety. But he taught me how to channel it, because he explained it to me like this. He said, I sailed around the world solo, and he said I never had an accident. Most people that sail around the world solo have some sort of mishap, some sort of accident. And he said, I didn't have a single one. And I said, well, how do you think you were able to do that? And he said, my anxiety. And I said, what? And I was still in my latter 20s. So I was still dealing with my anxiety and figuring out what to do with that. And I said, how? How does anxiety help you sail around the world solo and not have any accidents? And he says, well, he said, so what I would do if I was laying there at 2 o'clock in the morning and I was worried about a passage, or I was worried about the weather, or this or that, he says, I would, instead of laying there and ruminating over it, he says, I would get up and I would study. I would study my charts over and over. I would study the weather over and over. I would make sure that I had every known piece of safety gear. I would make sure that my boat was running in its best condition. And he said, so I channeled that. And ever since that moment, I have tried my best when I'm anxious about something. When I'm laying awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, knowing that I've got to make a passage from Florida to the Bahamas, which I've done 1,000 times and I could do with my eyes closed. When I'm anxious about it, I get up, I look at the charts, I look at the weather, and soon enough, it calms me down. I can go back to sleep, or I can refocus on whatever it was that I needed to refocus on. So what I learned from him was anxiety is not necessarily a bad thing. Use it to your advantage.
Mm.
Use it to better prepare you. If you're a student and you're anxious about exams, well, take that anxiety and study some more, because if you study some more, you're probably going to get the A, and then the anxiety is going to go away because you got the A, It's
An
like,
excellent tip.
you know,
Excellent tip. I love it.
yeah.
Absolutely. So you went to the yacht party, you stepped on board, and you thought, okay, this is what I want to do. What happened next? Did you have to take some sort of training? Like, how did that all unfold?
I opened my big mouth is what I did. So so I naturally was inquisitive, because for me, I could see that this was clearly nothing more than a heavy piece of equipment. And so, having come from farms and dating a really big time farmer and being around tractors and combines and engines and you name it, and also being mechanically inclined, one of the first things I heard was when they started the boat, I instantly then wanted to go to the engine room. And when I went to the engine room and he showed me around, the first thing that I noticed was, and I said to him, I was like, these are nothing but tractor engines. And the gauges on them are nothing but gauges that I see back home on the tractors. And then I made a wise ass remark to the captain when we were underway. I'm watching him maneuver the boat, which was very similar to how a tractor maneuvers. And I looked at him, mind you, I'm not even on this thing for an hour.
Mm.
And I looked at him and I said, I bet I can drive this thing. That not the comment to make. And he looks at me and he goes, oh, really? You think you can? I said, yeah. He goes, come back tomorrow. And I'm like, oh God, what did I just do? What did I just say? Where did this complete smartass just come from? Like, so I did. So now I'm like, okay, well, like, okay, this is what I told him. And he told me to come back, and I'm not going to punk out. Like, I have to go, I have to show up. So I showed up. And then he just took me under his wing and he taught me everything that he knew. And I asked him why he did. And he says, you don't see that level of drive and that level of inquisitiveness anymore. And he said, you wanted to learn. And he said, I wanted to teach. And, so there's another lesson in that as well. As I not only did I have my eyes open for an opportunity, I also had my eyes open to a mentor, to someone that I saw could potentially guide me to such an amazing place. And I think having someone in your corner, having a mentor, having that person and being open to that person, I think is a huge thing, because and I say it to this day, and I'm much further along than he is now in seamanship and in boat handling and all of that. I wouldn't be where I am today without him. So it's so important, I think, when those people come along in your life, to grab a hold of them,
Hmm.
because they've got something to teach you.
Yeah, I agree. Mentorship is extremely important. So this particular captain that trained you, like how long was the training? And did you have to, you know, take any coursework or any required certifications before you actually became a captain?
So I was lucky to have him, because he was the captain and he was also the owner. And I I I was my mom taught me the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And she's like, if you don't ask, the answer will always be no. So I made it very clear from the beginning that I wanted to be the captain, even though I did not know bow from stern or port from starboard. I made it very clear that I wanted to be the captain. And so he said, and he was adamant, he was like, okay, well, if you're going to be a captain, you need to spend a bit of time um, in all the different departments, on deck, on the interior, in the engine room, obviously in the wheelhouse. He's like, you need to not be an expert in every department, but in order to be a good captain, you need to know a little bit about everything. So I spent a lot of time kind of just rotating and doing everything on the boat. And actually stayed with that program for 8 years. Created a charter company. He said he wanted to build a charter company. I didn't even know what the word charter meant. I said okay, and then jumped on a plane to go to the British Virgin Islands and started a charter company, not having, like I said, I didn't even know what the meaning of charter was, but I was going to do it. Um, and so then along the way, he says, you need to get your captain's license. And I'm like, okay, well, how do I do that? Because I was just working, getting experience, um, begging to drive the boat, when the opportunity was right. And so you have to have a lot of sea time. Sea time is, or on the job training. There's no really class that you can take to learn how to drive a boat. You just got to go do it. You got to have the sea time. You got to have the on the job training. So I had racked up my sea time, and then I went and I took a course. So there was a course, got my basic level license, and then needed more sea time for my next license. And then I needed more sea time for my next license. And then I needed more classes for my next license. So I'm just continually, excuse me, continually building up to my next level of license. And so yeah, you do need coursework. There's a different way you can do it, is you can actually go get your college degree, in marine, but um, that's not what I did. I came up through kind of on the job training, if you will. And it's funny now, I'm ready for my next license, but I keep hesitating because the test is going to be really, really hard.
How many
And I
licenses are there?
so you can go, there's like the first one's like your 6 pack, then your 100 ton, your 200 ton, your 500 ton, then your 1600 ton, and your unlimited. So you can work because there's different sizes of boats.
Yeah.
So certain size license for a certain size boat. And I'm ready for my next one, which is a big step, and it's very difficult coursework. And I'm going through some stuff in my head now, and which I think this is another important message as well, is you'll get through life and you'll start something new. You'll feel like a complete fraud, a complete imposter, and then you'll keep working, keep working. You know, when I first started out, and I was a captain for a few years, and imposter syndrome was bad, like so bad. And it wasn't until I made a few certain passages that were really tough that I said, okay, I got this. I am like really and truly, I believed that I was a captain. But then you'll tackle that imposter syndrome, but lo and behold, there's always going to be something else that comes up, some new adventure, some new stage of life that it comes back again. And it's back again for me because I want that next license, but I keep trying to find reasons not to study for it. I keep trying to find reasons to not just hunker down and do it. Oh, I'm too busy, or I'm too this, or I'm too that, or oh, I don't really want it anyways. So I'm actually, as happy as I am, battling that in my mind right now and trying to go through the inner talk of, no, you can do this. You are smart enough, for crying out loud. You have your master's degree in chemistry. Why the hell do you think you can't do this? Yes, it is 5 days, 8 hours a day, 5 days straight of extensive testing, but you can do it. So may have gone down a little bit of a rabbit hole here, but the imposter syndrome is just because I'm dealing with it right
Yeah.
now, but what I've learned is if you put the reps in, you'll get past it. And what I've learned with that is I'm like, okay, I know this feeling and I know I'll push through it, but I
Mhm.
also know that it's going to take some head work to get through it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, you're a veteran now. You can absolutely do it. But when you experience those tough times, when self-doubt creeps in and you're trying to get to the next level, do you or have you ever, I guess, partnered up with someone going through the same thing, trying to get to the next license
Oh yeah.
together? Okay.
I'll go to somebody and I'll be like, do you have this going on, or did you have that going on? And they're
Yeah.
like, oh God, girl, hell yeah, I had that going on, or when I started doing more public speaking and I'm like, oh my God, or entering the inspirational speaking space, like I'm like, do I have the right to be here? Should I be here? Like, so
Yeah.
you have that to go through. But so I got a speaking coach for that, for instance,
Hmm.
and she, and excuse me, and that's where she's like, you got to put the reps in.
Hmm.
And I was like, you know what, you're absolutely right, because I remember the first time that I docked a boat probably wasn't the best, but after I put the reps in and I docked the boat over and over and over and over and over, I got really freaking good at it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
the more public speaking I do, the better I'll get. Regarding the license, yeah, I talk to people and I'm like, man, how did you feel about this? Or, did you fail the first time? Like, did you go back the second time? Or how many times did it take you, to pass the exam? Yada, yada, yada. So yeah, heck yeah. But I think you're right. Yeah, that you make a good point. It's really important but this goes back to what I was saying early on. I share my story so that you're not alone. You're not the only one feeling this way or
Right.
thinking these things.
Right. Exactly. Thank you for that. So I want to move in. I have a couple specific questions about life on a yacht. You know, what does a day in the life of a captain look like? And I guess captain of a super yacht. Is it mega yacht, super yacht? Is there a difference? What is life like on the boat? And who are your clients? I know you can't get into specifics, but what kinds of clients do you have?
No, that's a really good question. So, let's just take the last boat that I was on, for example, because it was super busy. And not all boats are busy. So you've got the first distinction is your program is either charter, meaning you've got, paying customers coming, or you're private, meaning you have the owner and you get repeat faces all the time.
Okay. Mhm.
Some use their boats very heavily and some don't. Some charter heavily to make money, some charter lightly just to offset expenses. Because as you can imagine, a multi-million dollar piece of equipment like that takes multi-million dollars not only to buy, but to also maintain and keep running. So, my last boat, for example, we were a charter boat, and one of the coolest clients that I had on there was Elon Musk's cousin.
Mm,
Um, the heir to Johnson and Johnson, Mars Candy, some really cool clients, and really cool people. So when you're on charter, it's busy. So obviously you're in charge of their safety, but you're in charge of their fun. They've paid you essentially on this particular boat, all in after tip. You're probably talking $115,000 for the week.
mhm.
And so you are in charge of making sure they have a really good time, but that they're safe having a really good time, because they're drinking, they're partying, you're out in the ocean, you're in the middle of this particular boat in the Bahamas, like nowhere, there's no ambulance coming to come and get you if something goes wrong. The local grocery store there's not. So you have to have provisioned the boat for, food for, let's see, 8 guests plus 6 crew for a week long. So try cramming all of that food and very high-end food in as many places as you can. So that the chef is huge. My job is safety and navigating and passage planning. My deck cruise team they're in charge for excursions, for taking them on the smaller boat to really cool places and seeing all the neat and fun things. And then my engineer's job is to fix anything that breaks along the way. And you do this all so seamlessly. You want them to show up and it just looks like by the push of a button, it all happens so perfectly. But the behind the scenes is insane. And, not only that, you got to remember too, on that boat, we were 6 crew living together, working together, playing together all of the time, and in pretty intense situations. Intense, making sure that weather and safety is right, but intense in terms of you're delivering the highest level of service.
Mhm.
um and then, so that's when you're on charter. That's when you're on, so to speak. And then when you're off, when the boss is not on or you don't have any charter guests, then you're back at the dock, and you're fixing anything that needs fixed. You're maintaining the boat, but every day there's always something going on that needs fixed, done, cleaned. I, as a captain, I'm more like the CEO of a company. I have a lot of accounting, a lot of paperwork, a lot of licenses to worry about. Engineering, there's always something to fix. Interior, there's always something to clean. Exterior, the boat gets dirty, and it's got lots of fine and pretty things that need taken care of. So you're working. Some programs, like I said, are busier than others. But there's always something. And I say it's like this: imagine taking a house that has all of the functions that it does, and setting it in salt water, which is so corrosive, and then plugging it in like with an extension cord and expecting it to run flawlessly. It's hard to do. Like,
Mhm.
I mean, it's literally a house on water. And so making a house on water run smoothly
Yeah.
and maintain it's a lot of work.
Wow. So, in your job as the captain, do you also manage the crew? And do you select the crew for each,
I
I
do.
guess, program? Okay.
Yeah, I do. So yeah, so that I hire and fire accordingly, and mentor and guide and lead. And it's I say that 90% of my job is people, 10% of my job is driving the boat. In in comparison to the day to the day, when you really look at it, driving the boat is actually such a small percentage of what I do. The majority of the day is people, whether those people be my crew, whether they be vendors, whether they be contractors, whether it be the owner, whether it
Mhm.
be the family office. I do a lot of peopling, a lot
Wow.
of people.
Wow. Keeps you busy. But
Yeah,
it seems like it's very rewarding, even with all of the stress and the chaos that comes with it.
I love my
It's
job.
such a rewarding job. Yeah.
I love my job.
Oh
I
gosh, I
love
know
my
you.
job.
I've followed some of your travels. You know, you travel to some of the most beautiful places, and I know you do a lot of speaking engagements, which leads me to my next question. What is the business of Captain Kelly J. Gordon? You know, what is that all comprised of? And, you know, it's captaining and what else?
It was a complete accident, that part of it. The the speaking and the influencing part, which I still just like, having influencer attached to my name just seems so weird, because I'm a captain. And public speaking, okay, I used to lecture chemistry for years and at the academic level, so I can kind of take the public speaking, makes sense because I naturally can stand up and speak. But that was all accident. Like, that was all complete accident.
Yeah.
And I was being a captain, doing my thing, driving boats and taking care of my crew and my owners and my guests for years. And then 4 years ago, somebody got a hold of my story, so to speak, kind of like what I was sharing with you about some of the ups and downs and being a female captain. There's not a whole lot of us. And they said, you should really share your story. I was like, oh, okay. Like I don't have a shortage of words. Okay, what do you want to know? I'll tell you. And they put it out in a magazine. And then another magazine calls and another magazine calls. And then along the way, I'm like, maybe I should start sharing some of this on social media. I hated social media. Couldn't stand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, well, so I go back to my teaching brain and I'm like, well, really the only way for me to share my travels, and I go to some really cool places, like other people should be able to see this. So I started dabbling in social media and I started sharing it. And then, another magazine article comes and then I start thinking, well, maybe I should share that story online on my social media. And then at the same time, I'm like, I really miss teaching. And at that time, I learned very quickly that I know nothing about social media. I don't have the time for social media, so I need a social media manager. And so then that happens. And as I'm saying to him about how I'm really missing teaching, he says, why don't you combine the two? And I'm like, how do you combine teaching and yachting? I'm like, that's not possible. And he's like, yeah, you teach your crew members all the time. Why don't we just put it on video? And he's like, well, why don't we just call it the captain's classroom? And I was like, oh my God, most brilliant thing ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so we started recording these short little clips. And I'm like, okay, the majority of my viewers are going to be young yachties. They're going to be in their 20 somethings. And I go back to my teaching days and I'm like, okay, I need to be quick. I need to be to the point to keep their attention. I need to put it on social media because that's where they're going to be learning and looking. And so then it all started taking off. And then along the way, I start hearing about some of the tough stuff in the industry, and I had heard about a crew member that had committed suicide.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what? I'm tired of this shit. I'm tired of this shit in the industry. I don't want to hear any more about a crew member's suicide. And I made a post about that. I didn't say anything special. I just said, check on your crewmates, check on your family, like, be nice. It just was a simple message. And two really big people from the industry chased me down at a boat show and sat with me for an hour and a half and told me that I had something and that I needed to run with it. So I said to my social media manager, I said, well, I'm just going to do a talk about it at the next boat show. And lo and behold, he made me put my money where my mouth was and he signs me up. And here I am doing a talk at the boat show. And then it just starts going. And then I said, okay, well, that was successful. I'm going to go international with this. Didn't really mean it. I just was blowing smoke. And then like a few minutes later, I'm over in, Europe speaking about this. And now it's just growing and growing and growing. And I'm like, this was all complete accident. And then I'm like, okay, it all started wanting to inspire people and help people and share my life, the pretty places that I get to go, but then the ups and the downs about life. And it just kept growing. And then I start speaking and I'm on stages and I'm just like, how did this happen? And then I become an influencer and then money starts coming in through sponsorship, which, let me just say for the record, I pour it all right back in. Thank God for the day job because that's how I pay my bills. But then I started thinking, I'm like, well, wait a minute. Could I create something with this? Could this be, when I can't drive boats anymore, could this be like my retirement job? Right now, any sponsorship that comes in just goes right back into the brand, goes right back into the message. But I'm like, maybe I have something here. Maybe I could build something out of this after yachting. Um, so yeah, it's kind of crazy how sometimes things just happen accidentally. But again, my eyes were open for the opportunity,
Right.
even though I didn't know exactly what it was. And a friend of mine even said to me something today. He hit the nail on the head. He was texting with me, and he said something to the extent, you're on your path. And he says, you may not know what your path is right now, but you're on a path to greatness. And I said, thanks for saying that to me, because while it might not be clear, am I going to become a public speaker? Am I going to be an influencer? Am I only going to do this for a few more years and say, you know what, I'm done, the hell with it? But he's like, you may not know what it is, but it's coming and it's going to happen. And so that that made me feel good because it reminded me to be excited about what I don't know is coming.
Exactly. Excited about the unknown.
Uh-huh.
And you mentioned something earlier where you said, oh, wow, I should take this speaking thing internationally. Well, you put it out into the universe, and you can't put something out into the universe and not expect for it to and
Come right
expect for
back.
that to manifest, right? So
Yeah.
that was happening. You're taking steps, and at the same time you're still kind of envisioning what could come next, what the possibilities are.
And the power of manifestation is like freaking huge
Hmm.
because every time I've said something, oh, I'm going to start this, or oh, I'm going to do this, or oh, I'm going to do that, that shit has happened.
Yeah.
But the reverse is also true. Anytime that I start to doubt myself, or anytime that I say, oh, well, this isn't going to work, you know what? It doesn't.
The universe is always
So
listening.
it is. So you can either say good and nice things are going to happen, or you can say bad things are going to happen. And either way you go, they're going to happen.
Yeah.
Like, so you be careful what you put out to the universe because it sends that shit right back at you, like at lightning speed.
Exactly. So, Kelly, about your speaking engagements, do you have a specific topic that you always focus on? I know you're really heavy into mental health and yachting. Is that what your
That's
speaking
my thing.
engagements center around? Okay.
That's my thing. That's my
Wow.
thing. I started to dabble at one of my last boat shows in the leadership space. It was received well, but what really people wanted to hear was about the mental health. And look, I'm not a counselor, so it's not speaking about mental health in that aspect, but it's speaking about here is what we're seeing in the industry. Here's what we're hearing on the ground. Here is some of the nasty crap that goes on in this industry, and here's how to handle it.
Mhm.
Here's maybe how you can handle it. Encouraging people to speak out, encouraging people to speak up, giving them resources as to where they can go. It could be a reporting agency, or it could be a counselor, or it could be a mental health first aid course. So it's really about bringing awareness. And the more I beat the drum, the more people listen, and the more people realize they can't turn the blind eye to the
Mhm.
stuff going on, because this industry is very pretty, and the optics of it are supposed to be that it's pretty, the secrets are hush hush. It looks like it all happens with the push of a button. Well, the reality is, well, it's an amazing job and it's an amazing industry. There's a lot of crap on the other side of it.
Mhm.
And I just feel that I have been given a platform as a captain, one of the few female captains, and I'm brave enough to speak up, and I'm going to do it. And and my partner said it the best the other day. He's like, "You want to leave your stamp on the world," and I said, "I do. I want to leave it a better place, and even if it's just one person." And so it's more about making the industry aware of what's going on, but also leaving the crew to feel empowered to speak up for themselves, to advocate for themselves, to
Mhm.
speak up for their crewmates, their peers, um, and to make some changes, to get some people listening.
Right.
And it's happening.
Mhm. Very
It's
incredible work.
happening.
Yeah. So, the other thing left for you to do is to put it out there to the universe that you're getting your next license.
I know. I have to. I have to. I have to. I have to put it out there, you
Right.
know?
You just got to say it. You have to say it and be confident about it.
I know.
Another thing you mentioned was in this industry, I guess it's not a lot of women. So I'm sure you're inspiring women to get into yachting as well.
There's there's a fair amount of women in it, but in very traditional roles. So women traditionally have the interior role, and men traditionally have the exterior role, meaning you don't see a lot of women on deck, and
Right.
conversely, you don't see a lot of men on the interior. And so I think sometimes simply just by me and being present and being a female captain, just that in itself encourages other young women that may want to do it to
Mhm.
go for it. because of captains, only 2% of us are female, and
Wow.
so that's really low. But in my 16 years, I see more and more all the time. There's more and more women on deck. There's more and more women in engineering, and I recently interviewed um, a male steward for an interior position, which I was so excited about because it's, we need to level the playing field a little bit. When you go to a recruiting agency, if you walk in and you're a man, they automatically want to put you in deck and engineering, and if you walk in and you're a female, they automatically want to put you on the interior, and it's like, stop that, you
Yeah.
know, just stop that.
Exactly. So I think this is actually a perfect time for us to move into what I like to call the strawberry round, where I will ask you 5 questions and you keep your answers short and sweet.
Oh
And if there's
Lord.
anything you
You
don't have
see
an
that that
answer,
is a problem, right? You see that short and sweet answers are a problem for me, but okay, I'll do my best.
no, it's fine. And if there's something that you want to dive into a little bit more, by all means, go right ahead.
Okay,
Uh,
let me have
First question is, name a book that has inspired you tremendously.
Leaders Eat Last.
Who's the author? Do you remember?
Simon Sinek.
Okay.
Find your why.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Awesome. What's a software tool or an app you can't live without, personal or professional use?
Windy. It has a lot of weather information on it.
Like, what's Wendy?
So
Okay.
nobody's going to know what Windy is,
Right.
but Windy is like a very integral part of my life, or tides near me so that I know what the tides are, what the tidal changes in the region. So can't live without them.
Oh, cool. Name someone you'd love to have lunch with and why.
He's 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 gone. He's not here anymore, but it would have been John McCain. I
Okay.
just There's just something about that man. Like that for me, and maybe it goes back to the time that I spent, married to a Special Forces Marine, and his time in as a prisoner of war, but there was just something very inspirational about that man.
Wow. Awesome. Do you have a life motto or favorite quote that you live by?
Life is what you make of it.
Very true. Last one is, what's your top self-care ritual?
Oh, that's hard.
Don't tell
Uh,
me you don't have any self-care rituals, Kelly.
I'm, I know because I preach about mental health and I preach about
Uh-huh.
taking care of yourself, and I'm like the pot calling the kettle black. I am like the worst. But no, I'm actually an extroverted introvert. And so I've learned that I have to say when I need time to myself, that I need time to myself. And that time to myself could just be being in the house by myself. It could be driving the car by myself. It could be a long bath. But um, knowing might not necessarily be a self care ritual, but
Mhm.
knowing and being aware that I need alone time. I need, as an extroverted introvert, I need that time to recharge.
Exactly. You know what you need, you know how to set your boundaries, you know how you need to refuel yourself. That's all
Yeah,
that matters. It doesn't have to be doing a thing, but if
right.
you're spending time in the house, like you said, hey, if it works, do it.
Yeah.
Which is something else I thought of. So, what do you do for fun when you're not?
So, you know, one of the questions that I've been getting a lot lately is how do you do both? Because it's obvious that my brand is essentially full time
Yeah,
and my job is as a captain is full time. And they're like, how do you do both? And I'm like, well, there's a couple of things. One is I have a really good social media team. Two is I have an amazing crew and couldn't do it without them. But three is I'm passionate about both. I'm passionate about being a captain and I'm passionate about my brand and making a difference in people's life. And when you're passionate about what you do, the energy just is endless that you have to put into that. Like when you're excited to get out of bed and go to work, or you're excited to come home to then start working on your brand, you'll find that you just have endless amounts of energy to do that.
yeah, absolutely. That's
I
all.
don't think I answered your question, but that was that was something I wanted to say.
No, but it made me think of something else that I'd like to just touch on really quickly. You also recognize the importance of delegation, that you can't, there's just no possible way for you to do everything successfully. So you have a team that helps you out. And it's important for a lot of other founders, or no matter what you're working on, you need to have support, figure out what your weaker points are, where you're not as knowledgeable or just don't have the time. You hire experts.
You do. You do. You
Yeah.
hire experts. You hire, I'm a big fan of surrounding myself with people smarter than myself.
Mm-hmm.
One of my I guess my other mottos is you never want to be the smartest person in the room.
Mm-hmm.
If I am, I want to go find another room. Um, but delegation never used to be so easy for me, but I learned that and I think this too just comes with self-awareness or maybe self-esteem or confidence or growth, whatever you want to call it, that you don't have to have all the answers. And and as a captain, as a CEO, as a business owner, you're not going to. Your job is to build a hell of a team. Your job is to go out and find the people smarter than you. They can run those departments better than you, and then to let them do their job.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, I've had to learn delegation, and I've had to learn acceptance of the fact that they might not always do it the way that I would, but that doesn't mean that their way is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They might not answer an email as fast as I want them to, but they'll get to it. They might not, you know, put something together or wash the boat or drive the boat like I would, but they do it and they get it done. But I think it's really important to understand that your job as a leader is to build a hell of a team
Right.
and to let that team go do their job. And and but then again, you also never want to be the smartest person in the room. You just don't.
Exactly.
You don't learn anything,
Right.
you
Right.
know?
And when it comes to building a team, like you said, you build a team and trust that they can do the job that they're supposed to do. But also, I'm sure you've put processes into place and they know you well enough to be like, okay, well, what would Kelly do in this situation? How would she handle this? So
Yeah.
that things can run smoothly the way you want them to when you're not running it yourself. So,
No,
yeah.
exactly. No, they 100%.
Wonderful. Well, Kelly, this has been an amazing conversation. I can't thank you enough. I've learned so much. I mean, I've come away with lots of little nuggets to use in my personal life, and I'm sure listeners as well. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, congratulations on your podcast.
Oh,
I've
thank you.
enjoyed
I have to
listening
have
to
you
it.
on. We have to do this. We have to do like role reversal here. I gotta get you on my podcast, and I gotta get you going. That's gonna be so exciting.
Yeah, let me know. Well, I'm not a yachty.
That's okay. That's okay.
Yeah. So, and that's funny. I thought about that word too because I had read it, or maybe I've heard it in a couple of your episodes, and I was like, "What is a yachty?" And then when I was looking on your website, I came across the merch page, and there's a T-shirt with the definition. I was like, "Oh, it's the people who work on the yacht." That's so cool. So, is that like an industry term, or is it
It
something
is.
you came
Yeah.
up with? Okay. Okay. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah, no, it is pretty cool. Yeah, yeah. But no, thanks for having me on here. I mean, I've learned so much and taken so much away from this conversation myself, and it's really cool, and the last one thing I want to say, is this is take two for us today. I tried multitasking and recording this in the car, and I lost the connection, and then finishing the drive to the house, I was like, damn it, everything that I just said came out of my mouth so seamlessly and perfectly. But then as we got to recording take two this afternoon, I was like, no, because now I'm hitting on things that I had forgotten about earlier, and the conversation is just flowing. And so, again, it's crazy how the universe works like it does, because I was like, oh my God, I had this 3 o'clock recording with her, and I'm totally messing it up, and I'm screwing up her day. And now I'm just like, no, that was meant to be like that, because the conversation, at least I feel that we got out of this, was just freaking awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And even, with before we began take two, I was like, oh, we're going to make this work. I don't care. You were like, oh, what about hair and makeup? I don't care about any of that. We're going to make it work. You're a busy woman.
Well, I got to come home and brush my hair and slap a little foundation on, so I feel a little bit better.
Oh, great. Thank you so much again, Kelly, for this
No, thanks for
conversation.
having me. This has been awesome. This is really, really good.
Now, for those who are interested in, learning more about you and following you, what are your links that you like to share? And I'll put post them in the show notes.
That's a great question. So my website is captainkellyjgordon.com. And then also, if you just go to any of my socials, it's at Captain_Kelly J Gordon. Or it's kind of cool. You can just Google my name now and all my stuff starts to pop up. I'm like, wow, that's when you can Google yourself. That's not gonna lie, it's pretty cool. So yeah, so you can go that direction. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Take care.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to another exciting episode of the MILFs Who Pivot podcast. Please take a minute to leave a review and don't forget to follow the show, download the episodes, and share with the other MILFs in your life. Listen in on any of the major platforms, including Apple and Spotify, or watch our videos on YouTube. You can join the community on Facebook and Instagram at MILFs Who Pivot Podcast.